Welcome to another Tax Talker. Thank you for clicking. I do appreciate it. Today we have the state of the IRS in 2025. The latest news. IRS Commissioner Billy Long is out. After not even 2 months on the job, he is done and Scott Bessent will take over as acting IRS Commissioner. That means there have been 7 different people who have been either confirmed heads of the agency or acting heads of the agency since the beginning of 2025. And this is just all the latest in what's a series of bad headlines for the IRS. Workforce shortages, backlogs on refund processing, unopened mail. And it's hard to believe that just 2 years ago, the big worry was the IRS's emboldened workforce, the so-called 80,000 agents coming from the Inflation Reduction Act. Let's cut through the noise and the politics and let's get to what is really happening at the IRS and most importantly, what it means for you, the taxpayer. We will start with current news. That is our newest ambassador to Iceland and former IRS Commissioner, Billy Long. Billy Long was a controversial pick from the get-go. He's a former Republican congressman going back to the Obama years. He'd been out of politics for a while. One of his approaches when he was in politics was calling for the abolishment of the IRS and then even trying to propose legislation along those lines. He also had no formal tax experience. He had never had formal experience running an agency. On top of that, he had ties to companies that took very aggressive stances on the fraud-ridden employee retention credit. And all that and some of his lack of cooperation added to dragging out his confirmation process. From the resignation in January of the former head, you had 4 acting heads, then you had Billy Long confirmed in June, and now not even 2 months later, he is out as IRS Commissioner. Now, I think it's fair to say there's not just one reason for why he's out. There was definitely a sense that he was in over his head, and congressional Republicans really need a smooth rollout and implementation of the One Big Beautiful Bill, especially as it relates to taxes. So he had a short leash. But there is one key item the Washington Post and others have reported. The DHS asked the IRS to use confidential data to locate undocumented workers. And Billy Long refused, citing privacy concerns. You're going to find conflicting reports as to how much this was an issue, but it certainly feels like it was a cherry on top. At any rate, Billy Long is out, Scott Bessent is in, just as acting head, but he has certainly been a stabilizing force within the Trump administration, and that gives us a little indication of the direction they want to go. But what does this mean for taxpayers? Billy Long is out, and soon he'll be a piece of trivia too obscure to appear anywhere. But of course, this is just part of a larger story with the Internal Revenue Service. And it's been part of a roller coaster going back to 2023. After the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRS got additional funding, and we got the so-called 80,000 new IRS agents. That number was always a little overblown. That was a 10-year projection of where they wanted to be in terms of additional employees. It wasn't a sudden army of auditors. But in 2023 and 2024, there was no doubt an uptick in funding and employees to the IRS. It's just always hard to grade compared to what? Pre-COVID levels, replacing retirees. What does it mean for the IRS to have historical low number of employees in an area that relies heavily on technology and whatnot? So there's a lot of different ways to parse this, but there's no doubt that in 23 and 24, we saw more funding and more employees coming into the IRS. Then comes 2025, new administration. And on day 1, there was a government-wide freeze on the hiring of new government employees. And on top of that, you had several different initiatives across the government to incentivize employees to quit or to retire or take early retirement. And at the IRS, they saw a lot of this. It's an estimate of about 25% workforce reduction across the board, but certainly in those critical areas of IRS examiners, the IRS call centers, IRS IT department. Many of the key sectors saw reductions around that 25% figure. And then there's just the political football of what does this mean to taxpayers? There's no doubt we are experiencing long processing times on amended returns and IRS mail before 2025, but it seems to be getting worse So it's not like 23 and 24 were a panacea, just throwing more money and bodies at the problem doesn't solve it. But certainly the reverse hasn't helped either and has created a lot of uncertainty and frustration. And I think that's what's so important for people to understand is that IRS cuts aren't an automatic win for taxpayers, just like an IRS growth isn't an automatic loss for taxpayers. I would think about it in degrees of competence. Is it better for you to have a competent IRS or an incompetent one? It's true that a competent IRS is probably better at uncovering fraud or mistakes you made in underreporting tax liability. But it is also better at processing returns, processing refunds, and inquiries from taxpayers. More incompetence probably means less revenue raised, so less tax being paid, but it also means delays, frustration, and a lack of clarity or uniformity in the application of tax law. So if your goal is to commit outright tax fraud, then sure, you probably have a marginally better chance of getting away with it in 2025. But for the vast majority of taxpayers just trying to do right in a complicated system, there's really no worse time to try to cut corners. The IRS computers still process all the 1099s and W-2s and information reported and churn out notices associated with gaps that they catch. And if you need to dispute one of those notices, whether with an amended return or a letter, you're looking at likely a 6 months to more in wait time. And that's all the reason to do everything you can to avoid questions from the IRS on your tax return. And that's what this channel is all about, helping you understand and apply the current tax law to your situation and avoid IRS inquiry. That is the Tax Talker for today. If you missed my previous video, it is topical. We're talking about 1099s and common mistakes taxpayers have that invite scrutiny from the IRS. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.